life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome to today's episode of Affirm That Sh. Somehow I've thrived. I'm honored to welcome a man whose story embodies the deepest form of transformation through pain. Dorian Johnson is a father, a best-selling author, a motivational speaker, and a man who turned unimaginable loss into a lasting legacy. After the tragic death of his son Bayland while hiking alone, Dorian journeyed through the darkest valley of grief and emerged with a message of grace, truth, and healing. But before we meet Dorian, we're going to share in his affirmations. So I invite you now to get comfortable in your space and place. Take a deep breath in. Hold and release. My story is not one of loss, but legacy. Through my son's journey and memory, lives are touched and hearts healed. My story is not one of loss, but of legacy. Through my son's journey and memory, lives are touched and hearts healed. My story is not one of loss, but legacy. Through my son's journey and memory, lives are touched and hearts healed. I forgive myself for the moments I couldn't prevent and cherish the moments I'll never forget. I forgive myself for the moments I couldn't prevent and cherish the moments I'll never forget. I forgive myself for the moments I couldn't prevent and cherish the moments I'll never forget. Through grief, I have discovered a deeper fatherhood, one where grief, grace, and growth coexist. Through grief, I have discovered a deeper fatherhood, one where grief, grace, and growth coexist. Through grief, I have discovered a deeper fatherhood, one where grief, grace, and growth coexist. Stay with us. After this break, we'll meet Dorian.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yukio, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Hi, Dorian. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Affirm That Sh.
You know what? It's an absolute honor for me to be here and to share my story of healing.
When we were introduced by our mutual friend, Portia Booker. And I will say over the last couple of weeks, reading about you, going to your social media pages, checking out your reels, you have a story that defines what Affirm That Sh is. And it's Somehow I Thrived. And so, brother, I am opening this platform for you to take us right into your shitstorm and walk us through it and how you're coming out on the other side today.
Well, I sometimes I love to just jump right into it and kind of take people back because I lost my oldest son 8 years ago. He went on a hike and he left the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend in 2017. And I had an amazing, if a parent could ever have the most beautiful conversation with their son or daughter before they left and something happened, I had that. I was able to tell him how much I loved him, how proud I am of where he was at that point. He went hiking on Thursday about 1, didn't come home. We started, something told me something's not right. So I went and got someone in town, a deputy, an officer, because where he was at, there was no service, cell service and that. We went up, started looking, the search and rescue came up. I thought, we're just going to find him. He's going to be in his hammock or whatever, sleeping. Well, he's not in trouble by any means. We looked all day on Friday. Saturday morning, just before noon, they found him in a river that was wet right up the canyon that he was hiking. And that was the most traumatic experience I've ever had in my life. Now, I will say, not to go into much more detail about things, but that's been one of the easier things I've had to deal with in the last 8 years. So, but in regards to, I don't even say losing my son, because in our affirmation about being a father, a much deeper in fatherhood, his and my relationship is much stronger and deeper, even though I can't see him. He's around me all the time. There are so many things where I'll have this thought and I know it's him sharing with me just a little something. I don't know how many times I've been standing there doing something, working so hard, sweating and that, just looking at something that I've done. And I get this, I'm so proud of you, Dad. And I can't help but just lose it at that moment because it's amazing. Grief is something that is so interesting because it is both horrific and it's beautiful. And the reason I say that is something that I've learned over the last little bit, and I'm starting to write another book about it, but audacity. I learned the word audacity. I used to think that is the dumbest word, just, it's smug, it's disrespectful, it's arrogant. Well, that's what grief is. It steps in and it says, rule number one, okay? It says, I don't care what you say, what you do. You don't get to tell me what to do. I get to run this show. However, I did some research and I love researching out where the origin of a word comes from. The word audacity is actually, it says it's bold, it's courageous, it's heroic, it's noble. So if we look at the word audacity and we say it meets right here in the middle and it has two legs. One of them goes over to grief, which is arrogant and smug and disrespectful, or else it's heroic and it's noble and it's all of these different things that leads to happiness. The difference is the intent we put on it. Okay. So I'm going to go back and just after just after we found him in the river, I don't know, we had his funeral and I don't know how I spoke at it, but I knew he was with me his mom and I had been divorced 5 or 6 years, and I knew I needed to give the send off he deserved because I knew him. And so I talked about how kind and compassionate and accepting and tolerant of especially some of these other kids in school who really struggled making friends and connecting with others. And he was always that one who, if there was a kid like that, he was with him. You're with me. No one's gonna bug you. No one's gonna bother you. Okay. And so I realized that he was all of these things first before anybody else had the opportunity to be kind to him or respectful or accepting or tolerant. But he learned that over years, just being aware of himself and his situation, around him all the time. All of these are virtues. And so in my study and research in that, I learned that the word virtue actually means it's a manifestation of power. Okay. So to look at this and we say, what does that even mean? Well, if I'm kind or respectful to someone and I put that out there, it doesn't matter whether they accept it or not. It's there. And there's a feeling. But what does that do? It doesn't just allow me to heal and be in that, I'm going to call it a safe space, but it allows something inside me to say, that's who I am and define me. So nothing outside of me is defining me. Okay. So that's a huge, huge thing to begin starting grief. Okay. And I talked to one of my friends and I said, what do you think about this idea? And she's a counselor. And she's like, if we approach it that way, then guilt and shame and fear and doubt cannot and will not be in the same room when you have a conversation with someone. And I'm like, that's interesting. So what I did is I took that idea and I said, well, what are the 10 core virtues? Not values, not characteristics, not attributes. What are the 10 core virtues? And I put it together. I was like, how do I put this together? And mind you, I'm not in my right mind still at the time. My mind is still broke. And so I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make it a visual where somebody understands. Well, I went to the periodic table of elements and I wiped it clean. And so I took the 10 virtues are wisdom and justice and fortitude, self-control, love, positive attitude, hard work, integrity, gratitude, and humility. What I did is I took those and I said, what are the different elements of each of those virtues? Okay. So, for example, if we think about wisdom, we if we want to understand wisdom, it's almost like, okay, well, we got to go find some old guy in a cave who has a beard down to here and say, what's the meaning of life? And he's like, well, let's talk about butterflies, and nothing makes sense, right? But if we look at the different elements of wisdom, which could be beginning with logic and reason, okay, those are the facts. That's intellectual virtue. If we look at creativity, if we look at wonder, if we look at imagination, if we look at those different things, we're still using our mind, but it allows us to use our experience, the knowledge that we learn, and do something with it that is different than what we've been taught. Okay.
And I
So,
want to ask you, because you're
okay,
leading right into something I wanted to ask about teaching, because you're teaching us. There's some of us probably didn't even know we could go to the periodic table of elements and look at these things.
right.
When you're researching, you're learning yourself. In that moment, what did grief teach you about love and joy?
Oh
that
my
you have
gosh.
at times?
That's a great question. So I think One of the other affirmations, it talks about, let's see, it talks about forgiving myself for what I couldn't forget and cherish the moments that make the love and adoration I have for my son what it is. Okay. So the interesting part is that it's almost as if my son doesn't want me to be sad. Okay. And I'm not saying he doesn't want me to grieve, but he doesn't want me to be sad because I have been driving around and I would see different things and it would trigger me. I'm just like, oh my gosh, ugh, I just wish I had the opportunity to spend another minute with you or whatever. All of a sudden, I have this thought in my head. Hey, Dad, do you remember the time we went over here and did this and did this? And all of a sudden, he's telling me the story as if it happened to, or like when it did happen to him. But I start laughing because of how it's being told to me. And that memory is beautiful because, well, another example is when he was a senior in high school, we were able to go elk hunting. Okay. And I promised him that he would get the first elk, not the first shot, not the first whatever. He was going to get the first elk. Okay. And he told me where he wanted to go in this, where we were hunting. And we go up and we sit there and we have this moment where the shadows start coming in and he's getting a little restless because nothing's happening. But I know that when the shadows start coming down, animals start moving, and all of a sudden I see 10 cow elk come over this little ridge, and I see this huge rack of horns up and over. Okay. So I get to relive this hunt every time I look at the horns that because he shot that elk and it's not the normal elk that a kid, with his first hunt gets. But I get this to look at this and relive this hunt over and over again. And it's not just the hunt, it's the sit there. It's the ability to sit there and say, do you see him? Okay, how about this? We sat there for like a half hour watching them. And so I think when we talk about grief, so many times people look at the things that they don't have that has been taken away from them. And I completely agree. However, if we look at why those moments hurt so bad, it's because of we can only grieve as deeply as the love we have for that person or the passion we've lost or whatever, the relationship, whatever that meant to us. That's how deep we, and I'm going to say, get to grieve because it to me, that's why it's so beautiful. There's a movie called Collateral Beauty, and I love referring back to it because there's so much beauty in being able to talk about my son and the stories that other people come up to me and say, did I ever tell you about the story? I'll never forget. It was within the year after he had passed, and I was talking to this lady. I didn't know her, but I knew she was from Preston, where I'm from. And I asked about her kids, and she showed me a picture of her daughter. And I said, oh, okay, I recognize her. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I showed her a picture of Bayland, my son. And she stopped dead in her tracks. She looked at the picture, looked at me, and she's like, your son stopped my daughter from hurting herself more than once. I'm so proud to say, yes, that is my son. That's who he is. And so the reputation he had, I never have to worry about apologizing for anything that he did. Okay. Now, going back into grief and loss and all of that and the reality of things, that's what the reality of things is what really hurts. For example, I'll share two examples in my story. So the tough part about when you have the search and rescue and all of these people out there looking for your son. I cannot go out and just start looking like what they're doing because I'm going to be walking over his tracks. I'm going to be walking all over. The dogs are going to pick up my scent. It's gonna mess everything up. So I feel embarrassed. I feel hopeless and helpless in searching for my son. And the looks, it's not meant, but as these individuals who I've grown up with and have been in a small town with, they look at me. It's almost like there's a sense of pity. I'm so sorry we have to look for your son, and it's not looking good, right? And I'm standing there I don't have any support from my family. No one's there for me. I'm standing there by myself. And when it became real, we had two helicopters come in. One of them was a life flight at about, about 10:30 in the morning on that Friday. Because what they do is they go across the mountain and look down in the trees to see if we're missing something that we can't see at ground level. Okay. No one told me. I'm sitting with this officer and she's telling me what's going on. They're bringing a life flight in. I'm like, but did they find him? And they're like, no, no, no. This is what we're going to do. So no one told me. I'm standing out there when the helicopter comes in. Everybody's talking to the pilots. Everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing this. And I'm standing there by myself. So I go over and I introduce myself to the pilots and that and say, I'm the dad and that. And I still come back over. People are walking past me and that. And I'm watching this helicopter go across the mountain. And I start to cry hard. And I say out loud, this cannot be happening. This cannot be real. This is not my story. And as people come by, they pat me or whatever, and I'm just sobbing hard. And I can't get control of myself because what the hell is happening? Not my son. Absolutely not. He had hiked miles, hundreds of miles on his boots. Just tell us where you are, please. Not long after that, I go in town because you got to get away from it. And some people say, how do you get away from it? You have to. You have to step away so you can clear your mind and whatever. But I sent a text out to one of my friends who, good support, strong man. And I just said, hey, here's what's going on. Bayland's gone missing. We're looking for him right now. He sends me a text and I throw my phone when I get this text because of what it says. After he's like, that's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to say, I'm going to come and help you. We're going to find him. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to support. The text says, let go of the outcome and you'll be taken care of. You asshole. You son of a, I throw my phone because how dare you? This is the beginning of the search. How dare you say, consider he might not be alive? So I went up and I was going to prove him wrong. We're going to find him. But I can tell you that lesson, that text, he and I have talked about it a lot. And I love being able to share that with people saying, in the worst time, in the darkest time of my life, you send me a text like that. And yet, what does it do for me today? If something gets a little tough, I'm just like, I can't hold on to whatever outcome I want for myself. I have to let go. I have to allow it to happen. But I also know that sometimes it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And
when you learned, when you look back at that moment, because that would be a text that would be hard for anybody to receive.
My gosh.
But especially from someone you found was a friend.
Yes.
You look back at the moment when you learned of Bayland's passing. there had to be a shift in you in that father connection immediately.
Yes, yes, yes.
What part of you shifted and what part of you remained rooted and strong?
Okay. That's a great question. The part that remained strong and connected was the connection I already had to my son. But I also knew that one thing I allowed him to do was make his own decisions and just let me know what you're doing, just so that I know. Okay. Didn't tell him what he was supposed to do and that. Um, but he governed himself so well. So that was still there. He's 19 years old. I can't say, no, you're not going hiking. You're grounded, right? So what it did is it strengthened that connection for me. Even the next morning when I said, Bayland, please just tell us where you are. Please. I love you with all of my heart. And at that moment when I said that, I feel this rush go through me like I've never felt before. And it came back through me. I do. There's no question. Oh, and it came back through me saying, I hope you know that I love you with all of my heart. He had already passed away. And so all of a sudden, that connection was so strong there. And even like when I go to look for him, it was almost like I had this. He just reached out to me like he did a text or a phone call. Dad, you need to come get me. Okay. So the fatherhood, even now to this day, if I have, something that I feel like he's telling me, it's always, Dad, this. But I also know that once he turned 18, he's a legal adult. I can't tell him anything to do. He's passed away. My stewardship over him is over on this earth. Okay. So all of a sudden I go from I'm not saying equals, but we're both adults, grown men, and yet the respect and love and honor for each other is there. So the I'll say patriarchal order, he still recognizes that I'm dad. I still recognize him as my son, and I'm honored by that. But the connection is level. The connection is it's such that I am always honored. I would always be honored to stand next to him, shoulder to shoulder, in any situation. You
And
know,
how are you honoring him today? How do you continue to promote him and bring his name forward? What do you do that keeps Bayland's journey here?
I love that. That's a great question. Also, I don't know how I can, but I have the opportunity to tell his story. When I say, I've lost my son, people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. They have no idea what that means. They have no idea what it feels like or anything. But when I get to tell stories about him and talk about him, it's like he's just off at college and that. He'll come back and that. But I get to tell this is what happened. I remember this story and this story and this story and this story. And the story when I tell when he says, Dad, I can't stop being friends with this kid over here. I know you want me to be, but if I'm not his friend, he doesn't have anybody, and everyone deserves one friend. That's my son. So in honor of him, I get to keep telling stories about him. But what it also allows me to do is to look around and see different different virtue elements in other people. And I love doing this. I walk up and I say, hey, Jennifer, I don't know what it is about you, but there's a light. There is something amazing about you that I noticed. Don't stop. Please keep going. We need you. We need you to be this way. I'm so grateful that you are. And I don't know whether it's your courage or if it's that light or your integrity, if your gratitude is just radiating. I don't know what it is, but I love pointing those things out. And those are the things that I see in other people that are not only in my son, but they're also in me. I just won't say, hey, guess what? I'm this way or I'm that way. But if I see it in you, I recognize it and I can say it. Does that make sense? So all of a
That
sudden,
makes
it's like virtue recognizes virtue, and love recognizes love, and beauty and honor and integrity and gratitude. So if I look at you and I say, I love this about you, in all actuality, I am saying I love this about you because I see it in me. I recognize it, but I
yes.
won't say it about me. But how healing is that? There's such a sense of confidence in being able to say, I am kind. I am confident because of the humbling process that has beat the shit out of me because of life. But I know how strong I am, but I know I don't have to use it.
And I'll be honest with you, Dorian, that's why this show, the Affirm That Shit, is not just your typical I am strong, I am
Oh my
enough.
gosh, no.
No, these affirmations that are written for you, talking about you today, they drive down to that story because you're going to hear from our listeners and our viewers. They're going to want to connect with you, and they
Good.
need to hear exactly what you're saying and be in that reflective mirror and pouring back in. And we
Yes,
have
yes,
that on a much deeper level with each
yes,
other. And I
yes.
would love for you to wrap us up with this and tell us about your books that you have, the one you've
Okay,
got coming, and how can our viewers and listeners reach out to you and continue this connection of healing?
wonderful. I'm gonna say one last thing, and then I'll share books and different things like that.
Yes.
Because um, what I have noticed is that we try to define ourselves by everything outside of us. And so as we talk about, I am kind and that, the one thing that separates our first name from everything else is if we say, who's that? We use a person's first name, right? Oh, that's so and so. Well, that doesn't tell us a whole lot about them. It just defines them by their name. What I've done is I've taken that and said, okay, if that's the case, then who really am I? And so I spell my name, it's spelled Dorian, but I've learned to say D is for dignity, and O is for originality, R is for respect, I is for individuality, A is for authenticity, and N is for nobility. Okay. If that doesn't scream power, that does not come from me, but through me. As soon as I hit the door to go to the outside world, guess what? I know how I have to be. I know how, in any given situation, I know that if I'm not acting with D is for dignity, R is for respect, N is for nobility. For me, for somebody else, I need to check myself. Need to get my head right. As soon as I come back from the outside world, how was it? How was I? Am I? And I know who I am. I don't ever have to question it, right?
Mhm.
That's a beautiful thing. In taking that, I the first book that I co-authored is called The View from Above, and it is about the search for my son. It is about taking an honorary hike a year to the day so that we could put one of his lacrosse helmets and a little plaque up on top of one of the rocks where he sent his last text to me that said, "This is a beast of a hike, but talk about a view." It talks about a lot of the things that I try to figure out. You know, it's Danielle Palmer who helped co-author that, did a beautiful job putting it all together. I gave her the story. It's amazing. We won an award for it, and that the second one is called A Day in the Life of Grief. And what I did is I took 10 different myths and I talk about myth understandings that we have, because time heals all wounds is such a lie. We
Hmm.
don't just sit there and wait for time to heal it. It's actually, we have to put action.
We
So
have to
if
be
we are,
active participants.
yes, If we have a flat tire, we can't sit and wait for it to fix itself. We have to get out and at least open the trunk. That may signal somebody to stop by and help, but we at least have to do our part to do something. The last book, and both of those are on Amazon right now. So A Day in the Life of Grief and The View from Above. If you search for those, even under my name, you'll find them. I read the book, The View from Above. I read the book for the audio. You can get that on audio or on Audible. That was a killer. But I was able to tell the story. I was able to, in my voice, and I was concerned about laughing and crying and all that stuff. I've had people, friends who I've known since high school saying, I loved the personal aspect of it. But so the last book, and I'm working on it, and I'm about 80% done with this book, and it's called Defying Grief. So instead of denying it, pushing it away and all that stuff, defying it means that we stand up with that audacity, that boldness, and say, yeah, I'll sit with you, but you sure as hell don't get to make my choices anymore. I choose to be happy, whatever that means. I have, I'm on Facebook, just under Dorian Johnson. I'm on TikTok under Bayland's Dad, Bailandsdad. Instagram under Bayland's Dad, I do believe. I've got another group called Unsung Heroes in Facebook, and I love that one because there's a few people who share different things also, but I love going out and finding the little things that people are doing in our world to just, and it's not always, going out there and just being, the guy who just, takes care of the bully and stuff. It's the simple things. Two people standing out there dancing in the rain. It's the fact if somebody goes out and helps somebody finish a race. It's the things that make me feel this way. And I'm just like, I want to go do that. I want to be that guy. Somebody says, you're the guy teaching people to be that guy. And I'm like, I don't care. I still want to be that guy.
Exactly. And I appreciate you for being that guy and still having that drive. And I appreciate you for taking the time, sharing Bayland's story, sharing your journey with us today. Thank you for being the most amazing guest here. You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.